As soon as the ink was dry on the Dobbs legislation, my world flipped upside down. Reporters had been asking me for months how the possible reversal of Roe v. Wade might impact my work. It won't, I'd naively say. See, I run a pro-life feminist group, which I'll give everyone a second to wrap their heads around that because I know it doesn't really make sense. It sounds like a dichotomy. My organization, New Wave Feminists, we follow something called a consistent life ethic, which is basically a belief that human beings should be protected for the duration of their life, from womb to tomb. We oppose war, the death penalty, police brutality, torture. We're pro-migrant and we're pro-life. We extend it into the womb when human beings are at their weakest and most vulnerable. But the thing is, we also never really focused on the legality of abortion. That just wasn't our thing. We've always focused more on systemic issues that lead one to make that decision. So that's things like paid family leave, pregnant worker protections, affordable housing, and healthcare. And this is based in my own personal lived experience. At 16 years old, I became pregnant. It was terrifying. My family was heartbroken. My boyfriend and I broke up. Not long after, he switched schools, leaving me to deal with the echoing gossip and whisper of the high school hallway all by myself. There were points where I really didn't think I was going to make it through that time, but I did, and now I have an amazing 22-year-old son to show for it. People are often surprised when I tell them that I never once considered abortion, but it was for 3 very specific reasons. The first reason is that I myself am the product of an unplanned pregnancy. My mom was just 19 years old when she got pregnant with me at the University of Texas in Austin. She could have easily terminated, but she didn't. She chose life, but then her life took on a completely different trajectory. Over the next 10 years, while she was waiting to complete her degree, that's how long it ended up taking, we had so many unnecessary struggles. That's why as a feminist, I advocate for us actually supporting pregnant and parenting students, because you shouldn't have to choose between your career, your education, your future success, and your child. The second reason that I never considered abortion is because my family did an amazing job at humanizing the child in the womb for me from a very young age. I don't know if any of y'all remember that Life magazine from 1965. It had these amazing images of fetal development stages inside the womb, and as a small child, I would pore over them in awe. So even to this day, my pro-life views are very rooted in science and biology. The third reason, and the one that probably influences my work today the most, is the fact that as petrified as I was, and I was petrified at 16, I still had a roof over my head. I had food in my mouth. I had clothes on my back. I had access to quality health care. So many people don't have that. These were privileges. There's not a day that goes by that I take that for granted. And that's all I want for other pregnant people as well. In that regard, our work at New Wave Feminist wouldn't change, hasn't changed. But the second Roe fell, our nation became brutally divided. All of these people who had joined us in the middle, all of the fence sitters who were willing to work alongside us, suddenly hopped down and ran to the extremes. And I didn't see that coming. So yeah, a lot has changed since June 2022, but unfortunately a lot has also stayed the same. The ability to access abortion in a lot of states was removed, but nothing pro-life, no huge initiative was actually put in place to fill that void in the vacuum, right? The supply side was cut off, but the demand side is still fully intact. Now, there are hundreds of thousands of amazing pro-life people out there who have been working tirelessly since before I was born to address this issue. They will literally walk alongside a pregnant person for the duration of their pregnancy and beyond. They will do anything that they can to support them, but unfortunately that's still only a fraction of those who consider themselves pro-life. For far too many people, they're actually just anti-abortion. They use the term pro-life to signify how they vote or what political organizations they support, or perhaps let you know exactly how they're going to ruin your family holiday gatherings. But it's just an opinion, and opinions are cheap. Authentic beliefs usually cost us something. Authentic beliefs require our time and our money to be invested in a solution. Today I would like to propose a new meaning to the word pro-life, a meaning that has to be earned through actions. Actions that go way beyond the ballot box. A while back, I was put in contact with a young mother. She was 20 years old, has a precious 2-year-old daughter. As soon as she had her daughter, she dropped out of school. She lacked the usual family support. They were immediately thrust into poverty. Now, a lot of pro-lifers will look at this and they'll say, oh, good for you, you made the right choice. But exactly what type of choice had she made? I mean, what type of life had she just earned for she and her young daughter? A life of evictions, a life of couch surfing, a life of working 40 hours a week at a childcare facility where thankfully she's able to bring her daughter for free, but still doesn't make enough to actually put a roof over her head because that was her current situation. And unfortunately, this story is not unique, right? I was excited to help her. I mean, I do this on a national scale all the time. People from other states call me, but seldom am I able to do it in my own backyard. And I had heard of all these amazing resources we have here. I mean, after all, we're Dallas, you guys. Like, we have a lot of stuff. So I thought, okay, I'm gonna make use of my knowledge and my network, and I started making calls to shelters all over the Metroplex, only to find out that they were all at capacity. Some didn't have vacancies for months, and even then it wasn't guaranteed. Others required things like a high school diploma or a GED for entry, even though they were programs for young single parents. And yet, more of them required that you be at least 20 years old to live at this shelter. I'm sure that there's valid reasons why all of these policies exist, but none of them got this mother and child any further away from sleeping in their car. And they would certainly work as a hindrance in future cases with younger parents. It was at this point that I started thinking back on all of the times that I had helped others abroad, right? They would call me. I had this procedure I followed. I knew the right words to Google. I knew what resources they were going to be looking for. I would usually try to find a point person in each city to walk with them through this process, and then I would get a good night's sleep knowing that I had helped someone that day. But had I? Like, actually? That was the question I was asking myself now that I was the point person, now that I was running into dead ends at every single turn, now that I couldn't help this young mother and child. I guess my question is this: do pro-lifers simply live in a fantasy land of resources, a fantasy land that doesn't actually exist? I worry for a lot of us we do. Because whenever I would relay this story to my other pro-life friends, they all had the exact same response. They would say, oh, have you reached out to this person? What about that organization? Have you called this group? And that's great that we have all these options, but if you've been fortunate enough that you've never had to access any of those options yourself, you don't actually know which ones are valid. That was the struggle that I was having, right? That there just weren't the resources that we thought they were. We've all become really good at patting ourselves on the back for passing the buck, myself included. But what do we do when we find out that that buck is actually counterfeit or was already spent yesterday on someone in need of that same resource? As a pro-life feminist, believe it or not, you would think I'm very unpopular, but I have friends all over the spectrum. Some are pro-choice, pro-life, Republican, Democrat, Independent, Libertarian, Socialist. I have a few anarchists thrown in for just excitement. Every single one of them at their core, though, is a good person who would do anything in their power to help a young mom and child. But what does it look like for us actually to create an equitable society for pregnant and single parents? I would argue that everyone in this room, and likely everyone in this country, has some level of excess. It might be harder to find for some than others, but we all have something: time, money, material possessions. And I think it's time that we take a look at that excess. I want to take a quick detour just for a second to the moment when I was actually helping this young mother when we were brainstorming ideas for possible housing once the shelter thing wasn't going to work out, and I had suggested the option of her staying with a host family. I remember that her face lit up and she said, oh, that would be wonderful. And you know what? I've actually just applied for food stamps. I'm hoping to get approved. And if I am, I'll be able to share some of my food with them. That was beautiful, that heart, that even when she had so little, she still wanted to give. And that's what we needed from others with much more at that moment. Thankfully, we were able to find a host family for her that did that. The thing is, we have to create a new meaning to the word pro-life. And those actions, that excess, I think that's where we're going to find it. Let me give you a practical example when it comes to excess. That car that your grown child left behind when they went off to college Perhaps you were thinking about selling it, but what if instead you donated it to an organization like Embrace Grace? They're based out of Dallas. They have chapters all over the globe. They walk with pregnant parents throughout the pregnancy and beyond, which is a key part, and beyond, outside of the womb, you guys. They walk with pregnant parents and meet a lot of their practical needs. A car is something that a lot of people don't think about, but we've found that most of the time when people are considering abortion, it's because of housing, healthcare, transportation, and childcare. So transportation is a huge one. When it comes to a young parent who's working an hourly job and has to take half a day off work, and I mean, they need every penny at that point, right? You have to take half a day off work to take 3 buses across town to get to a doctor's appointment, you're probably gonna skip it. Those are the type of hard choices that we see leading to really unfortunate birth outcomes. So the gift of a car could quite literally save lives. Or perhaps it's not material possessions. Perhaps you just have a few extra hours in your week. Consider partnering with an organization like Abide Women's Health, based out of South Dallas. They do amazing prenatal care for underserved women in our community. I mean, they are absolutely excellent. However, a lot of the families that come to them need more than just medical care. They also require Medicaid. They require maybe help getting on WIC. If you've never had to navigate a system like that before, it can be incredibly daunting. Heck, if you've ever used a phone tree before, you know how hard that is. So even just knowing how to operate, being able to call up one of these parents and say, okay, this is what you're gonna do. I know you're using your 30-minute lunch break to make those calls for help. Press 1, then 2, then you're gonna put this number in, then you're gonna go do this. That's how you're gonna access the resources. That would be such a huge help. These are the papers you need. This is what you're gonna have to take. These are the options that you have now. Being able to walk with families like this so that Abide can focus exclusively on their prenatal care will be a huge help to everyone involved. Now there's one other course of action that comes to mind, obviously, because of my work with this young woman, and that is what I call pro-life hospitality. Perhaps your excess is simply a spare bedroom in your home. Now, it takes someone who definitely feels called to this course of action, because I know it's not for everyone, but it's high time that we normalize that level of community. We've all become very individualistic here, and we don't want people in our spaces and touching our things, and I don't know, I'm uncomfortable with that. But this sense of community that we could build could truly save lives. Offering a young parent, pregnant or with small children, the ability to be a part of your family is huge. When I was 16 years old, the reason that my son and I didn't simply survive, but we were able to thrive, is because I had a family unit. I had built-in mentorship. I had a mother, grandmother, and even a great-grandmother at that time with years worth of hard-earned child-rearing wisdom that they were able to pass on to me. It was such a blessing for us, and I think it absolutely contributes to the way that both of us were able to turn this thing that would otherwise be difficult into something that's actually helping others in our communities and nurturing them. Could you imagine tomorrow if we woke up and networks like this were being built across the nation by charities and organizations and churches, matching up pregnant people who need basic support, a roof over their head, food in their mouth, clothes on their back like I did, but also the emotional support that surrogate families can offer. With families that are willing and able to do that, I would argue that that would change not just the landscape of our communities, but change it for generations to come. I would argue that it would also add a whole lot more weight to this pro-life belief, because it would no longer be something that indicates what we want to take away from pregnant people, but instead what we want to give them. So while the ink on this legislation might be dry, I think it's high time that we rewrite what the word pro-life means and change it from an adjective into a verb. Thank you.